Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Wholeness Campaign podcast. Today, Eric and I are here, and we are going to talk about hitting walls on your healing process. So, if you have been on a healing journey, whether that's a physical, emotional, or spiritual journey, you likely have come across walls. Walls meaning basically moments that are confronting your reality where you may have thought that it was going to go one way and it basically hasn't, and it's
Yeah.
showing up, and you have to kind of come face to face with the reality that maybe something you're doing isn't actually working, or a way you thought about something needs to change, or you need to change. You need to actually do something different. And we've talked about this before, that like doing the same thing over and over and over again, expecting different results, is insanity. And I think we should just kind of talk through this, because for us this week, this felt relevant. And I know it's been relevant for me so many times before.
Yeah.
And so we want to just talk that through. I think it's
Yeah.
a little bit of a taboo topic in the world of like alternative health. Usually you just want to hear the answer when things are going shiny and good.
Everything that's going good,
Right.
everything that's going right.
But
Yeah.
the reality is people get to the actual answers by hitting wall after wall after wall and
Yeah.
persevering. So
Yeah, and the question really isn't, will I hit a wall? It's when.
right.
So I think a lot of times when people so let's say a wall is like an obstacle, or it can be a moment of doubting what you're doing, or
Yeah.
questioning what you're doing,
Yeah.
or wondering if what you're doing is actually going to work or help. So we've all hit those moments,
Yeah.
and we want to kind of flesh that out a little bit, because I think what we see on social media a lot of times is just, it almost seems like people never have doubts, or they
It's
just,
very black and white.
yeah. But I think us as humans, we all have doubts, and we want to talk about, what do you do when you hit the wall, when you come to that moment of doubting, of struggling, of wanting to give up? What do you do? How do you move through that
Right.
wall?
Totally. Yeah, so I think let's give some examples of like physical walls, and then emotional walls, and then spiritual walls, because I think we're going to go through all of these and then share some of our recent walls that we've hit. But let's
Yeah.
give some examples. So, like a physical example might be you've been eating a certain way, and for whatever reason, you thought this was the healthy way. So this happens a lot in America. You think that you're doing the healthiest version, and you end up going to the doctor, and they tell you that there's something seriously, massively wrong, and that you need to completely change your diet. So that might be an example of like hitting a wall, because you thought you were eating the right way, and then you come to find out it's not working. Or maybe even something like, I don't know, maybe with like physical, like let's say exercise, like a wall people would hit is that they, I don't know, I see this a lot. People wanting to lose weight, and then they go to the gym and they go all in, working out every single day, hours and hours, and they end up gaining weight. That would be a wall.
Yeah.
And then it's just, they hit this point of like total frustration.
Yeah.
And that would be a wall, right? Like it challenges their current paradigm.
Yeah.
That's probably the best way to describe a wall. Is a wall is something that challenges your current paradigm. So
I think another wall could be, whenever you start something new, there's a lot of excitement around it. So when you start a new diet or a new fitness trend, so say you're starting gaps for the first time, or you're starting cold plunges,
oh yeah, this is a
like
good one.
people get really excited about that. There's a lot of adrenaline, there's a lot of excitement, but at some point, the excitement, the adrenaline's gonna kind of wear off,
Yeah.
and the hype around it's gonna wear off, And then that wall might be, what do you do when that wears off?
Right.
And now you're left with, do I actually want to be doing this? What are
Right.
the reasons why I'm doing this? Am I in this for the long run?
How
Because
do you
you,
stay consistent?
yeah, you need, in order to get through that wall, you need a bigger why than just this is cool or this is exciting. And it needs to be something that's personal.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because when we'll go there, because
Yeah.
if it's just to please other people or to make your spouse or your mom or your dad or your friend happy, then that will only get you so far. But when it becomes your decision, your journey, you embrace it,
Yeah.
that is the thing that carries you through.
Yeah.
So I've seen that in my own journey. I'm sure
Yeah.
you've seen it in yours.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go now. Let's give some examples on like the emotional walls that you could hit.
Hmm.
Because we've both been on an emotional health journey as much as we've been on a physical health one. Um, we've been on this emotional health journey. Let's say, you move out of your parents' house and you realize that, um, yeah, a lot of the things that happened in your childhood or the ways your parents did things was actually not that healthy and may have caused some pain that hasn't been processed. So that would be an example of like an emotional wall. And so now you have to kind of grapple with like, how do you do relationships? How do you relate to people in a healthy way? What does a healthy family dynamic look like? What are you looking for in a spouse? Like, what are you not looking for? So you have
Yeah.
to like kind of reevaluate all of the, the family habits that you received from your first family
Yeah.
and kind of like choose whether or not you're going to continue those on. That would be an example of an emotional wall. So I see people hit this wall and I've hit this wall like when they directly move out of their parents'
Yeah.
house. It's like you almost need space to like realize, oh gosh, like that wasn't healthy.
Yeah. Or let's say this just came to me. An emotional wall could be maybe you learned in your family dynamic how to get your way by using certain emotions
Yeah.
in an unhealthy way,
Yeah.
and then you enter out of that into a marriage or just life,
Right.
and you still are trying to use that coping mechanism and it's not working.
Yeah.
So say you learned how to use anger to like get your way,
Yeah.
or you used some people have learned how to use what's almost like a victim mentality or
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
but it's like that victim mentality is kind of used to like manipulate for people to
Yes.
feel bad
Yeah.
about you
Right.
or bad for you,
Mm-hmm.
and that might work in some dynamics, but then the wall would be, oh, this isn't working anymore, so
Right.
I need to learn another way.
I'm losing friends
Yeah,
because I can't
yeah.
relate to people this way.
In order for me to keep
I
my
learned how to
job,
manipulate
yeah,
to get my way, or even manipulation was the way that I felt safe,
mm-hmm,
because if I could please people,
yeah,
pleasing is a form of manipulation. If I could please people, then I'll keep them happy.
yeah,
And you enter into real life and you can't keep people happy. And so it's
yeah,
ends up being this kind of confrontation you have where you have to learn how to do things a different way, or you continue to do things that way, and then just another reality to this walls is that some people do just flat out reject change,
mm-hmm,
and they refuse to change, and so they end up not just they essentially hit the wall, but the wall doesn't act as a motivator. It just kind of acts to spiral them. It acts to trigger them. Maybe pain comes up in those moments of hitting a wall, but they don't actually do anything different, and so they end up kind of perpetually hitting this wall.
mm-hmm,
Um, or you don't learn in your internal world to like submit to it and like
yeah,
let that, um, depending on what it is, like let that not affect you in the same way.
yeah. Well, the wall is always an invitation to evolve or grow,
Or heal, yeah.
and it always invites you to look inward.
Right.
So you have to kind of look inward into why am I hitting this moment? And
Hmm.
then it's that journey inward that then leads to an outward change.
Right. Right.
And a lot of people, they don't want to go inward, or they just think it's all external,
Yeah.
or they blame the wall and they think everyone else needs to change.
Yeah.
Oh, it's, they blame it on, well, that's just the workplace, or
Right.
that's just that person.
Right. You can
Th-
blame
They'll
externally.
blame
Yeah.
everyone else needs to change except for them, and they will never break through to what's on the other side until they go inward,
Yeah.
until they own what they need to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just see people get stuck there, and myself, like
Right.
I'm tempted to get stuck there.
Yeah.
It's like it's kind of like the idea of, like, there's this guy Jocko, I forgot his last name, but he talks about extreme ownership. And
Yeah.
in some ways, you kind of need to learn to take healthy, because I think there's unhealthy
Yeah.
extreme ownership, like you're just kind of like a martyr,
Yeah.
like, you know, but learning to take healthy extreme ownership of, like, hey, what was my part in anything that went down, any fight, any argument, anything
That's good.
that didn't go well, like, what was my part in it?
Right.
And cleaning up my part, owning my part, and always being aware and knowing that you probably played some part.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah,
So these walls are not just external, they're an invitation inside to,
always,
they're always an invitation inside.
always.
And, often you can be in these such extreme situations that maybe make it seem really tempting to blame the external. But
Yeah.
the reality is, you can, if you can own it, there's a lot internal that,
Oh, yeah. It's
um,
actually a good thing,
it is a good thing.
because and I see God in that, whether you believe in God or not. I think God always uses that, because in order to really mature in life, you need to go inward
Yeah.
for a period of time, not to get lost there, not to
Yeah.
get stuck there, but just for the time that you need to then come out on the other side more self-aware, more loving,
Yeah.
more kind,
Yeah.
um,
There's a
all that kind of
refining
stuff.
process.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
on that note, like, let's talk about some spiritual walls that
yeah,
people hit. The first thing that came to my mind was when people kind of have this like doubting crisis where they're like, they might be experiencing like suffering,
yeah.
and that doesn't align with like the God that they've heard of. And
Mhm.
so they have a lot of questions for God. Often they're asking the question, why? Why,
Yeah.
God? Why me? Um, why is this happening to me? If you're a good God, why would you let evil happen? That's
Yes.
like the common question. If
Totally.
you're so loving, why am I experiencing pain?
Mhm.
Um, so that's like a really common wall that I probably every single person, if you have any belief around God, you have to kind of ask that question at some point because, um, yeah, I mean, that's another piece of hitting spiritual walls is you have to like grapple with like, what do you believe about God and what do you
Yeah.
believe about this like eternal source of love?
Mhm.
Like, who do you believe he is? That kind of, those kinds of like existential questions
Mhm.
are really common in like a spiritual wall that you
Yeah.
might hit.
No, I think, yeah, for spiritual, like, the wall is always a crisis moment, or I would say even like unanswered prayer.
Unanswered prayer,
There's
yeah.
actually an interview that I saw. I didn't see the whole interview, but I saw a clip
Yeah.
with Kanye West,
Okay.
and he was really into Jesus and following Jesus for a little bit.
Interesting.
But recently in this interview, someone asked him about Jesus, and he said, I'm going to kind of paraphrase, but he said that he has his own issues with Jesus now, essentially
Mm,
because there was a lot that he had prayed for and had asked, but it didn't happen. So that is a wall for a lot of people, is they they kind of, it's like the cliche of, like, God isn't a genie in a bottle type thing, but I
yeah.
think it's even deeper than that. I think the refining process is, like, we think we know what's best for us,
Yeah.
and we all have to go on a journey of trusting, like, hey, maybe we don't, or maybe there is a loving God who actually has something better for us.
Yeah.
And when we go through crisis, when we go through something hard and we pray and we ask for God's help and it doesn't seem like he shows up, that can be a big wall for people,
Yeah.
because usually in that journey you then have to go on a process of learning what God's real nature is
Yeah.
and what internally might be holding you back from seeing or understanding what God's true nature is.
Right, right. Or like I see this a lot in the chronic illness healing space. Like we talk a lot about gaps in the alternative medicine world is yeah, when somebody prays for healing and they don't get healed. Like
Yeah.
we come from a charismatic background, so we believe in healing. We believe in the gifts of the Holy
hmm
Spirit. We believe that God can heal somebody instantly. Both of us have seen very miraculous healing stories. Um,
Yeah.
healings happen right before our
And
eyes. I've
we've
experienced it.
experienced
Both of
God's
us have
healing.
experienced it where
Yeah.
it's like I mean I literally we could give examples on examples.
Yeah.
Seeing people's legs grow out. I've seen um, somebody deaf start to hear. I've
hmm
seen um, yeah, the effects of like drug use in you like go away instantly. I've
Yeah.
seen I don't know, like
Yeah. Lots of things.
concussion symptoms disappear
hmm
right away. So I've seen a lot of like these crazy kind of miraculous stories, and I think when you hear those stories and you're on your own healing process, like it can be really challenging when you pray and you don't see that healing. That's a huge wall for people. That's a wall. I mean, I see people hitting that wall
Huge
sometimes
wall.
for years who are struggling with
Yeah.
chronic illness. And maybe the answers are a little bit, they're a little bit complicated, they're a little bit nuanced, and probably we're not going to go full on in depth into that in this episode
Yeah.
because that would be a really good episode. We should probably do that. Um, but I think that's a common wall people hit. And what ends up happening is in any of these walls, when you hit them, is you tend to think that what you're doing is, you tend to blame, basically. So you're looking for something to blame. In the situation of not seeing like miraculous healing right away, people tend to have this grief response. The first grief response people often have is blame or anger. There's a lot of different grief responses, but the grief response of blame, just to kind of pin it on God and basically say like you're not who you said you were,
Yeah.
and
Or he's
like
bad.
yeah, you're bad, you're
Yeah.
evil, you're causing this.
hmm
Like I see that a lot. You're causing this problem, or you start to change your theology
Or he's just not real.
and believe that like oh God inflicts this pain for her good, and you
Yeah.
basically start to kind of like, it's actually a grief response where you're trying to mentally process this wall you just hit because you're confronted with a reality that you're living in sickness still maybe, and the other reality that that person just got healed of something that they've been dealing with for their whole life or maybe even been dealing with for like a short period of time. That can be really
Yeah.
challenging. And I remember you said this the other week, but oftentimes people will jump from thing to thing to thing
hmm
because they hit walls.
Yeah.
Any wall. So this could be an emotional, spiritual, or physical wall. So you are on a diet and the diet's not working, and
Yeah.
or it's not working the way you thought it was going to work, or it's taking more effort, more time, all
Yeah.
the things, and you hit that wall, and you're like, I'm sick of this. You know, my blood sugar's gone up, my whatever, my cholesterol has gone up. You know what I believe about cholesterol. It's not working, and we're going to just jump to the next thing. Or explain your process in this,
Yeah.
not just your testimony, but I want to hear like because you talked to me about this the other day of kind of like the
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
the thing to thing to
It's the
thing
process
people,
of growth.
the process of growth, yeah,
Yeah.
and maturing.
Yes. Yeah. So this is something I actually learned from John Mark Comer, who's a Christian author.
The
He,
ruthless elimination of hurry,
yeah,
if you know that book.
Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, which is really popular amongst Christians, but even just people that are into self improvement, slowing down, stuff like that. But yeah, Christian author. He has a ministry that's all about making disciples and spiritual formation and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
he talked about this growth process, these 6 stages.
Mhm.
And I forgot that there's actually a name for this study, and he didn't come up with it, but he just taught on it. But
Yeah.
essentially, he talks about these 6 stages of growth, and this could be applied to anything. Like this could be applied
Yeah.
to uh, a diet, to being a Christian, to
Yep.
movements,
To maybe trauma,
to
even.
yeah,
I would say trauma. I've seen
yeah,
it happen in trauma.
yeah. So let's say we're taking the example of being a Christian, let's
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
and then you can, as I break this down, you could see how this could apply to different things.
Yeah.
But that first stage is like a stage of awakening. Like it's when someone first gets introduced to the faith and they're awakened to the idea of Jesus. So that's
Yeah.
usually a stage of a lot of excitement, or it could be like someone who gets awakened to carnivore is really popular right now.
Yeah.
So they it's that aha moment of, oh my
They
gosh,
start on the diet
yeah,
and all their inflammation go down, and like
yeah,
three of their symptoms they've had
yeah.
for 20 years
It's
disappear.
like this is the answer to life, and
Yep.
this is great. It's
Yes.
very optimistic, very like the sky's brighter, everything's awesome.
Yes.
It's that
Yep.
awakening moment. Then the next stage after that usually has to do with um, you're kind of getting submerged in a community
Yeah.
of learning
Yeah.
more about it. So
So
you're,
now you're on social media, you're
yeah,
learning all about meat and
or
butter and
yeah, or like with a Christian, you start going to church, or you're a part
yeah.
of a Christian community with like carnivore or like a nutrition. Maybe you start hanging out with other people that are on the diet. You're talking to
Yes.
people on you start following
You could
people
you
on
could talk you
Instagram.
could talk about like even EMDR. Like I think a lot of these different like trauma healing things can be kind of like
A
that
lot of
too,
different
where you're
things.
like
Yeah,
you you realize you have all the trauma, all of it gets
yeah,
unleashed. You hear about something like EMDR, which yeah, we can go to that
yeah.
later, but
Whatever it
it's
is.
like
Yeah,
a type of trauma healing.
yeah,
You start on it, your first couple sessions are amazing,
yeah.
and you start to feel like you actually are getting like emotional breakthrough you've never had before.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're in the context with a counselor and you're that type of community. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, yeah. So it can be applied to it's because you're thinking this is
This is the
everything
thing.
I need.
This is everything I need,
Yeah.
and this is the
Or
thing I've been
and
missing.
kind of what you're thinking too is like you're not realizing that there's any potential faults or anything that could any hardships that are attached with it.
Yes, it's
You're
very black and
you're
white.
just seeing the positives of it. So then that third stage is so once you're in that community, that third stage is you become more of like an active voice in that community.
Right.
Like you are kind of leading more. So if it's like the church, like maybe now you're starting to like lead small group, or you're leading a Bible study, or
Yeah.
you're leading youth group. If it's like the carnivore diet or what any diet, maybe now you're starting to like
Post on it about social
yes,
media.
now you're
Yeah.
starting to post or talk about it,
Share
right?
about it. Share with
Yeah,
family
yeah,
members.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, after that is where the wall usually comes.
Right.
So at that next point, the wall is usually a moment of crisis or a moment of something happens that you didn't expect. So with Christianity or faith, it could be an unanswered prayer.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a death in the family. Maybe it's someone you prayed for and you asked God for them not to die and they did.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're
We had
faced
that
with this
recently.
this crisis moment with the carnivore diet. Maybe it's you, um, all of your health issues are clearing up, but now all of a sudden you're struggling with this other random health issue. And you
Yeah.
thought, oh my gosh, I thought this, was just going to heal everything and I was just
Yeah.
escape. So that wall, what happens for a lot of people, and this is what I'm pointing out, is they hit the wall and they don't go inward. They don't know how to wrestle. They don't know how to wrestle with the tension of this being a very good thing, but also I'm living in the broken world. So, like with Christianity, we do believe in Jesus. We do believe Jesus is God,
Yeah.
is the way. But we also know that we live in a fallen world, that, there's truths and tension, that every prayer doesn't get answered. So the wall would be wrestling through that and holding both of those truths and
Right.
tension, with something like carnivore diet or even GAPS diet, it's
Yeah.
realizing like, hey, this has a lot of benefits. This is a great opportunity, but it's just
Part of like
one part
healing.
of healing. It's not
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
I still need to go to counseling. I still need to believe in something
You
that's
have to
bigger than
still
myself.
actually work
Yeah,
through things.
yeah,
Like you can't
yes.
just
Or just
it's
understanding that it's a process.
yeah,
And sometimes it's 3 steps ahead, 1 step backwards.
right.
So sometimes when you hit that wall, I've seen people, what happens is they don't know how to break through. So they start back at stage one in something different.
Yeah.
So when you don't know how to work through that wall, because then stage four is the journey inward.
Right.
It's to get through the wall, you need to go inward. You need to wrestle with your doubts. It's the dark night of the soul. It's you know, you need that time to reflect, right?
Yeah.
Um, but if you never enter that, a lot of people start back at one and then they turn vegan and then they become a Buddhist.
Right.
And that so they jump
And then
religions, they
right.
jump diets, they jump into something
They
else.
go into yoga.
Yeah.
They like
And then they have
right.
another awakening moment
And they're like,
of this is the thing.
wait a second. It wasn't the GAPS
Yeah,
diet.
it
I'm
was
actually supposed to
this.
be a vegan.
Yeah,
Wait a second. It wasn't like Christianity. It was all religions are the
whatever it
same.
is. Yeah,
Wait a second. This exercise
yeah,
method didn't work
yeah,
entirely for me, so I'm going to throw the entire thing out and
yeah.
just do
That,
yoga.
yeah,
Like it's just like anything.
yeah.
Consider
I
it
think
anything.
part of it at the root is we think hardship is bad. We think the right thing shouldn't ever bring about pain or something hard or something uncomfortable.
Wow.
So
That's
the
good.
the the second that movement or that religion or that whatever it may be gets a little messy, gets a
It
little
gets messy.
chaotic,
Sometimes relationships get
we
messy.
think, "Oh God, we must be on the wrong path."
Right,
So
right.
we jump ship, become awakened and kind of obsessed with something new. So now it's veganism is the answer, and I need to go completely plant-based. So you just restart the steps. You
Right.
become awakened to that. Your eyes are open to that. You're like, this is the answer. You join a community.
Cults. Cults
Yeah,
cults form out of this
yeah.
stuff. Like cults literally form.
But if you never actually finally accept and learn that you need the hardship, you need the crises in a way, you need that crises moment to go inward,
Right.
then you will just keep jumping to something
Right.
new. And you'll never go deep
Yeah.
because stage 5 after 4 is it's the journey outward. So once you go inward, you then can go outward in a healthier way.
That's really
So
good.
like with Christianity, it would be like you would resubmerge and maybe have purer motives of loving people and being like Jesus.
Right.
In the beginning, it's you're kind of loving people on adrenaline.
Yeah, that's really
And
good.
but then when it gets hard to love people, that's when the real challenge comes. That's when the real motive is, why are you loving people? Are you loving people to just try to convert them or just try to get your way, or are you loving them because that's who you are?
Right.
Or with like the carnivore diet or gaps or whatever, that stage 5 would be like, even why are you helping people? Or why are you spreading the message? Or how are you spreading the
Right.
message?
Or like what or why are you even trying to heal yourself? Are you
Yeah, why?
trying to
That's a good
because
one.
there's
That's
like
great.
there's this really common like mentality that can come in this world where especially like the health world is like are you just healing yourself to fix yourself
Yeah,
or are you actually after the joy that's on the other side
yeah,
of the healing? Like, what
yeah,
are you living for? What are you
yes.
trying to heal for? Are you just healing to say that you've healed? Are you just
Yeah,
healing to, are you healing because there's like maybe some underlying trauma there that you're like kind of subconsciously pushing against and trying to defy? Or are you healing because you want to become whole?
yeah,
It's it's like a
And that,
vision, which is part of what we
yeah,
talk about here a lot. And um, it's like the having a bigger vision of wholeness and what life is really like meant to be like versus, yeah, is this the thing? Like becoming a part of the fan group
yeah,
or like trying this out, trying on fads and looking like an influencer. It is so much deeper than that. And so, yeah, I mean, there's so many different areas.
no,
I'm
it's so
like,
good. I mean, if I'm being honest, just to give a practical example, I feel like for me, my journey with gaps and nutrition, I've hit a lot of walls.
yeah,
And I would say I'm still wrestling with that journey, the inward journey
yeah,
of that. And recently hitting another wall of like getting some blood work, my cholesterol being higher than I wanted it to be, some other markers being a little higher than I thought. And just that thought of like, I've been on this for 6 months. Why aren't all these things better?
right,
That's the wall for me is like, oh, I thought this was just going to make everything better right away.
right,
And then realizing, and I'm still realizing, but just realizing like, oh, in a lot of ways, I've I've looked at this diet as just like, I just want to get done with it, check the box, and then, you know, not go on the journey of actually like lifestyle change
and
and
learning how to love yourself,
and letting it
learning,
become a lifestyle type thing of like this is,
listening to your body,
yeah, I am somebody that exactly. It's like actually listening to my body and actually doing what's loving for my body and things like that. I've resisted that for whatever reason. I still don't fully know. I'm still like on that
yeah,
journey inward. I
right,
still don't fully know why.
yeah,
I think it feels scary for me to actually, in some ways, I don't even know how to do it, like how to listen to my body and know what it needs.
yeah,
That feels scary. That feels kind of confusing. It feels like, how do I do that?
yeah,
But I listened to some practitioners, even Becky Plotner before she passed away. I met with her and she was the one that recommended GAPS stage 2 for a year. But she also said to me,
yeah.
hey, if you ever just feel like you're craving something that's outside of stage 2, like
It was like fall apples.
practice
Yeah,
learning how to
yield to your
yield
body.
to that. And
Yeah,
that freaked me out because I was like, no, I just want,
no, it's black and white.
yeah, or in this area, maybe I just don't trust myself or know how to do that well enough.
Yeah,
So I would rather the prescribed way of doing it.
right.
But wholeness in every area looks like trust.
Yeah, that's really
It
good.
looks like,
It's love. It's really
yeah. And
it's
it
a
looks like
self
being
love and then
connected.
being able to like
Yeah.
give out that
So
love.
it's like it's a lifelong process and it looks like connection and being wholeheartedly involved in the process.
Yeah.
And for a lot of us, it's easier to just check it off the list.
That
To
is actually easier.
It
Believe it
is,
or not, even if the standard was so high, it's actually easier just to like abide by the standard and
yeah,
check mark all those
yeah,
boxes than to be like, okay, I'm gonna like give my heart to this
yes.
and give
Feels,
my life,
yeah,
not like,
yeah.
not in like a, I don't know, self-deprecating way, but
No, just I like what you
you're
said.
like
Like, give your heart. You're
giving your heart to it,
wholehearted, because
showing up to the table.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because with wholeheartedness can come disappointment. It comes. There's some turbulence. There's ups and downs.
Yeah.
That's what it's like in relationship with God. Is once you give your whole heart to it, there are ups and downs. There is a mystery. There are sometimes your prayers get answered. Sometimes they don't.
Right.
It's the same way with nutrition or your own healing and health journey. Is it's not all perfect. It's
Right.
messy. But it is the better way. It's the harder, it's the more vulnerable way.
Yeah.
And it requires you going inward because then your heart gets unlocked.
Right.
And then it's the thing that allows you to be more wholehearted
Yeah.
and like connected to what you're choosing into.
I love that. Yeah. It's really good. It's really good. Yeah.
Well, how about you? Do you feel like there's a wall that you've hit recently, or one just even thinking about walls that you've hit?
Yeah,
What's an
yeah.
example for you?
I think for me, let's see. The real question is which wall should I mention?
Hmm.
Um, so we are in marriage counseling together. We um, see an amazing counselor, and he does like emotionally focused therapy, which for me is very helpful because I tend to bypass people's emotions in or my own emotions. Like if I can try to like convince the counselor somehow that I'm
You're good.
100%
Yeah.
good, then I've won. Um, but yeah, for me, I've kind of hit this wall where I'm just realizing that like more of my trauma is coming up in our relationship than I actually thought was possible or happening. And he's challenging both of us, but I think for me, I'm feeling it particularly hard to kind of go deep and learn why, like kind of ask like the why. So he's having us do this like activity, and honestly it's been a challenging activity to complete because I know all of the things. Like in my head, I actually have the head knowledge of it. Like I know it was like kind of a little cheesy exercise, but it's inviting you to see how like your parents affected the way that you view your spouse. So if you like, um, anyway, yeah, like if you had like a parent that had a habit of doing a certain thing and or were affected by them in a certain way, then like kind of recognizing how that shows up in your disagreements and your arguments, your fights.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing that like the tricky part for me is when I know I actually have the head knowledge of it, but you're so right on like the journey inward really is recognizing like how do you how do you apply it? Like it's
Yeah.
one thing to feel like you know the information. I could know a lot about myself. I could be extremely self-aware, but it's the vulnerable piece of actually having to apply it
Hmm.
and to like show up and realize how it's affecting my life.
Yeah.
Um that is a wall that I'm hitting because I think I actually thought that I had worked through some of these things and they're still like showing up. And
Mm.
so it's like, yeah, you can, you know, do counseling on it for however long I have, like 7 years, and it still feels like it's um you know, the pain of that is like affecting our marriage and it's affecting the way that I show up to a lot of different relationships actually. So it's been challenging, and I feel like um yeah, it's easy to gloss over that. It would be easy for me to just like jump to a different counselor or think that he doesn't really know what he's talking about or he doesn't understand me because I already know this stuff.
Hmm.
But it's you guys, it's like totally different when you like know it in your head versus like when you like start to have somebody else as like your mirror and seeing how
Yeah.
I mean you as my mirror, just exposing all the stuff. And yeah, that's a wall I'm hitting. And um I could probably keep going, but I won't.
What do you think the invitation is to break through the wall? Like for me in the nutrition, I think it's learning, like me learning to like own it like it's mine.
Own it like it's yours.
Yeah,
You're
like
doing it for you. Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yeah.
I think for me, you know, I could say it's like more time doing this or more time doing that or really taking this exercise seriously or like doing all of those things. But I think some of that is a piece of it. But I think another piece is just like um, kind of like the humility in the moment to like sit, to take a step back and like really listen to you, listen to myself in that moment, and even being willing to like vocalize it. Because yeah, it's you can kind of like skirt your way around things, and I've just tended to do that, like where um I'll find a way out of the vulnerability of it.
Yeah.
And so then for me, the invitation is probably like
To yield to the
to
vulnerability.
yield to
Yeah.
the vulnerability and to, you know, even if you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to actually have like a clear path forward, but it's yeah, it's being willing to be open
It's good.
and keep your heart engaged. Like for me, like yeah, keeping your heart open and keeping your love turned on and
Yeah.
keeping that sounds like a terrible yeah, but
No,
if you know
that's
the people, then you know the people. But keeping your love on and um yeah, like letting other people affect you. So
good. Thanks for sharing.
yeah, I think that's probably where we'll wrap up here. Um, yeah, if there's an area of your life where you feel like you've been on this uh, hit like at this point of just hitting walls and you're feeling challenged in any way, if this podcast challenged you or if you've been being challenged in your own life, leave a comment down below. We would love to, if you're on YouTube, just leave a comment. We would love to kind of read through and hear where you guys are at, hear what walls you're hitting, because we hit these walls all the time
Yeah.
and we want to create a kind of safe community to share and be vulnerable and um, go on this process of maturing and growing together. So if you got any value out of this video, like, subscribe. If you're on other podcast platforms, leave a review. Um, we are excited to be here. We're excited to be sharing our process with you guys, and we're hoping that it can get out to more people. So thanks for watching.
Peace
Peace
out.
out.